Good morning, friends of the channel. I'm in my old workshop because today there's some news. I've got things to do, and since the little helpers are growing up, today Emma's doing the tutorial all by herself. I haven't had a say in anything. Let's get started. Today, I'll explain how to match colours on this table using the colour wheel. I've put the curry up, which is my base colour, into a tray, and today I'll be using a roller and a brush. Roller, as always, with a wrap of tape to remove any excess fluff. I'll start with the brush and then use the roller. The brush really helps me reach all those tricky corners. Then, with a medium pile roller fully loaded up, I find that using the roller gives me a lovely smooth and even surface finish. Mind you, for tables and chairs, always start with the furniture upside down so you can do all the parts properly, even the hidden ones. I cover the whole surface in this direction and then I go over it to smooth it out along the length. I'll carry on over the whole piece of furniture and apply 2 full coats. I hold the brush by the ferrule, covering all the areas I can't reach with the roller. Once I've finished with the loaded roller, I'll go ahead and cover the whole surface. I'm using the roller because I want to get a smooth, more modern finish. For the top, again, make sure to spread the paint in one direction first and then lightly go over it along the length. Mind you, the roller must always be loaded. When it stops laying down colour, you reload it with paint so it's always full. Don't press down on it. And another tip is to let the paint dry naturally without forcing it with a hairdryer so it levels itself out and you don't get an ugly orange peel effect. A second coat over the whole structure to get full coverage. Same method as before. First we roll in one direction, then we smooth it out along the length. Perfect. Let's leave it to dry and move on to the decoration. Now I'll show you how to use the colour wheel. For the tabletop, I've decided to use the Mattonelle stencil to recreate this very Magicka effect across the entire surface. I'll start by carefully centering it, just to ensure that I have the exact same pattern visible on all sides. To do that, I've lightly drawn a guideline with a pencil, which I'll simply rub out later on. But then I'm left wondering, how do I actually decide which specific colours to use to perfectly match my curry up? I use the colour wheel. Today, I'm suggesting 2 types of colour combinations. The first is a contrasting combination, so I'll be using colour contrast. A contrast of complementary colours. A complementary colour is the one opposite on the wheel. So in this case, yellow. Its opposite colour is blue, because obviously the carry-up sits between an orange and a yellow, so we'll go for these shades of blue. The contrast of complementary colours works well if we choose the same level of colour saturation. That is, the carry-up is a slightly more muted yellow, so I'll choose a slightly more muted blue, such as sunset blue or sugar dust. If it had been a much brighter yellow, I might have preferred a nude d'amour. The other combination I'm going to show you, using the other side of the wheel, is a combination of analogous colours. Analogous colours are those that sit on the same side of the wheel. So at the bottom we have the cool colours and at the top we have the warm colours. Therefore, I'm going to choose shades analogous to the yellow that have the same warm tone, which are Castellamonte and Vintage Rose. In this case too, I'm using tones that have a slightly lower saturation, so not a bright pink or a bright dark red, but 2 slightly more muted, earthy shades. I'll use them to fill in the various designs on my tile. Now it's up to you. You can decide how much and how to use the colour. Obviously, the predominant colour in this case will be the curry up, but I could easily have used one of the other colours and mixed them differently. I've decided to make some tiles with the 2 shades of blue and some tiles with the 2 shades of pink. But if you prefer to mix them up, to make some tiles a bit pink and a bit blue, that's absolutely fine. It's your choice. At this point, it's just a matter of personal taste. I'll take a little bit of colour and dab it off. Make sure to always keep the bristles brushed downwards. After that, I start dabbing. I prefer this part to be sugar dust. When the brush stops leaving any colour, I take some more. I want these curls to be sunset blue. I'll continue over the whole surface, alternating my 4 colours. Mind you, the brush must always be nice and dry so you don't smudge the stencil or create paint build-up. If you like, you can go over the colour twice to make it more opaque. First stencil finish. I love it! Now I'm drying it off, dabbing the excess paint quite lightly onto some spare cardboard and then with a paper towel. Once that's done, I'll carefully reposition the stencil, taking this little edge into account, and then I'll continue to fill in the whole surface. Before repositioning it, I'll lightly dry the stencil. I'll reposition it flush, as the edge shouldn't be doubled up. Right, I'll just fix it with a bit of tape. So if you could hold it a little higher on this side, we can carry on. Stencil finished, I love it so much. Now I'm going to embellish it with some touches I like. I'm using the clear sand that I've put in this little tray with a bit of water to make the brush glide better. The light always comes from the top right. So in this case, coming from here, I'm going to add a little touch of light here like this. From here, it will be positioned on top, and from here, it will go over to this side. I'm simply going to use little delicate touches of light to add a bit of movement to the piece. I'll do this across the whole stencil. For the brush, just use whichever one you prefer. I would recommend a pointed brush though. I'm currently using the number 6 brush from the set. You know, the ones with the black handle. What do you think? I absolutely love it. Now, one last touch, a light decoupage effect on the edge to wear it down a bit because I don't like it when it's too perfect. And then matte protective coating. I'm lightly dampening the surface and then with the hand tool, I'm bringing out the wood. I use the sponge to create less dust and to slightly soften the paint. Et voila! I'm doing this all along the edge of the table and also on the edges of the legs. Final touch, the protective coating. I'm using a matte protective coating because I want an almost invisible finish. And this way I'll be able to put my table anywhere, in a kitchen, outside, under a porch, and I'll be able to use it without any problems. Wax would have worked perfectly well too, but it would have given me a slightly different finish. Here, I really want a matte, almost invisible finish. I'm using the Architetto brush. With this specific brush, I can easily reach even the most hidden spots and also achieve a really nice, even application by using a crisscross brushing technique, first in one direction and then smoothing it out along the length. Perfect. I'll carry on over the whole piece of furniture, being careful not to let it drip. I'm also protecting the top surface, again using cross brushing, first in one direction and then carefully smoothing it out along the entire length to ensure a perfectly even finish. There it is, finished. I really love it. I hope the tips I've given you on colour combinations using the wheel have been useful and that you'll use them again in the future. As you can see, the contrasting combination stands out a bit more because it's the strongest combination there is. It contrasts, so using contrasting colours, whereas the other one remains a bit more subtle, a bit more measured. So do use these tips for your own homes too, to match furniture to your walls. Remember that you can find Magic Paint products on the magicpaint.it website, where there's also a map with all the Italian stockists. You won't find them on Amazon or in DIY chains like Leroy Merlin. Goodbye!